BankservAfrica have signed an MOU, that's a memorandum of understanding to facilitate payment services including bank card acceptance and also issuance. CNBC Africa's Nozipho Mabanjwa spoke to Brad Gillis, who is the CEO of Regulated Services at BankservAfrica, for more on this story. Here it is.
The MOU, what it means is that there is a partnership arrangement that we've established with China UnionPay, or UnionPay as they like to call themselves internationally, and the idea is that it will now give the banks and therefore the consumer the option of an alternative card as opposed to the more traditional cards that are currently issued in this economy. Just as a caveat to say that, of course, at this stage, it's their international cards that we would want to help facilitate on the processing side. They will start issuing, of course, in line with their strategic intent.
Let's also look at the outcomes of the BRICS Business Council, which was just held about a week and a half ago. A lot of the resolutions that came out of that meeting hinged on easing doing business between the member countries. How does this particular MOU support those resolutions?
Well, absolutely. What we're about is we're call it a one-stop shop, so that banks who want to connect to UnionPay can now don't have to connect directly to Hong Kong themselves. They can connect through us, and we can give them the efficiencies, and then obviously give them the benefit of a sort of tried and tested standards environment so they can do their transactions.
Let's bring this down to an ordinary businessman in South Africa or a Chinese businessman who has interests in the South African market. How does this help him to advance his strategic agenda?
So as a business individually, of course, he can go to any UnionPay merchant and then be able to have his card acquired, and it'll be facilitated through to UnionPay. Of course, ultimately, if he has, let's assume he's in tourism, then he's able to promote the consumer and his client, who can then obviously gain access to payment systems that are based here that will allow for them to use their cards internationally, obviously in the South African market.
So it's quite a revolutionary approach to banking across different countries.
Sure, it gives another option to the consumer and to the market, and I think it's good for competition. Let's
look at what BankservAfrica brings to the MOU. One would assume that it would be greater exposure to African markets. If that's the case, which other African markets are you seeking to penetrate together?
Well, let me just explain. Of course, BankservAfrica having connectivity to all the banks means that it's a lot more efficient to be able to come to one portal than to be able to have multiple portals into the UnionPay switching environment. So we would give that efficiency. In the African market, our particular focus is on the South African development community. There is a payments integration project being launched by the central bank governors, and this is another piece of, I think, a really positive puzzle where you can now take card payments and a variety of card payments into the region that is the SADC initiative.
It's really interesting, given the fact that just yesterday we heard news that out of the Zimbabwe World Trade Organization summit that happened over the weekend, that they were also thinking about introducing a 27-country visa for the SADC region. So not only will people be able to move across, but it also seems like they're going to be banking across very easily across these countries. But let's also look at the particular markets that you have in mind. Is there any particular focus where you want to say within SADC this is the next big port or point of contact for the BankservAfrica and UnionPay collaboration?
So BankServ, being the central hub, would be wanting to supply both across the various countries but also within the countries, and it is very much a consumer solution. What I'd like to add to that is that it's consumer card, but we know that things like mobile and smartphones and all these other gadgets are becoming a lot more relevant in payments, and this type of arrangement, this type of partnership means that we can take it to the next level and not just have card but have other payment channels available to a very much an emerging market that is probably going to leapfrog the more traditional payments products that we've had in place.
But if we go a step back, just before this MOU was signed, to a large extent we saw an increase in volumes of transactions for UnionPay in South Africa, especially around sectors which were attracting Chinese businessmen and Chinese tourists, retail being one of them. Are you seeing to break out of this mold? Is this MOU going to enable UnionPay to break into other sectors?
I think absolutely. Of course, its model will be around getting a broader acceptance of their card, which means they have to get out to the merchants, and the merchants could be more than just retail merchants. It could be anyone who wants to acquire a payment from China, Union Pay, as well as locally once they start issuing. So it clearly expands the entire retail market and could in fact permeate the corporate market as well.